Then you start here and you'd see it on the visualizer, you know? So. So, you know, but it kind of gets trouble. Stuff.
Okay.
You just type out the questions answered.
Okay.
Hi, how are you doing?
Into the minutia minutes.
Yeah, plan and see.
Yeah.
In case somebody get there.
Yeah.
Right there, plan.
Oh, you know what? There's some other.
Yeah, I've read minutes where it's like, he's like court paragraphs. I can't, just want to put it down and listen to the recording
Like it
or go to the reading.
First 2 minutes for HOA.
Our computer in between.
Yeah.
Do I need to take notes? I'll tell them
Handwriting.
people that thing.
Yeah, for a second.
Maybe I'll move. I knew there was something. No, are they boys or girls? Here you go.
It's hockey.
Just messing with you.
It's hockey season, y'all. If
Skipping out
You're
on our
lucky I'm
wall.
here.
You're
Always.
boys.
Yeah,
Which I don't usually do.
But they're.
Yeah.
Well, we have, this is our third meeting today. So you can bring an extra coffee.
It's a long time sitting today, you know.
Today we packed it all in.
Did I do get on the radio?
Again, tomorrow too.
So scared.
You are. Even stuff.
Really good.
So all the girls.
Even it's not.
Okay. Well, all the guys called me. I called all those girls now.
No, my niece is
I told my aunt, and she's like,
We gave it to her.
Yeah.
And I still need half.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, your other name, no, no, she came into town.
I thought it was a town.
Oh,
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is, let's see, today's date is January 31st, 1 p.m. And this is the joint meeting with the INR and City Council. And it is 1 p.m. I will introduce myself. I'm Barb Nosworthy, the mayor, and we'll go around the circles so people that are listening can hear the voice.
Andrea Parmenter, 9R Board of Directors Secretary. Erica Brown, Durango 9R Board of Education Vice President.
Rick Peterson, Board of Education Treasurer.
I'm Kristen Smith, Board of Education President.
Katie Stewart, just Board of Education.
Karen Chesser, Superintendent.
Melissa Youssef, City of Durango, City Council.
Olivia Vaughn, City
Right,
Councilor.
that too.
Erin Heider, Assistant City Manager.
Jose Madrigal, City Manager.
Jessica Buell, City Councilor.
Thank you. And I will start this meeting with a land acknowledgement, which represents my acknowledgement is not a statement on the part of all of council or individual council members. So for thousands of years, this region was home to numerous people, bands, tribes, and nations. Each had their distinct culture, artistic expression, and community mores. In particular, this region was the ancestral home of the Nuchu, Dene, Pueblo, Hopi, multiple Apache bands, and various other tribes and Latinx people who used and stewarded this land. I recognize that indigenous peoples were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands by the US government. It is important to recognize that the narrative of this region has mostly been told from the dominant perspective without recognition of those who came before us and who to this day continue to thrive, create, and connect with this land. Thank you for your respect in my acknowledging this legacy. Thank you. So we will get started. Our agenda today is a city council update and a Durango School Board update. We'll look at organizational collaboration, possibly a DEI discussion around efforts by the school board and potential regional group. We'll move on to Buckley. We will look at 9R district updates, future bond projects, discussion on ways to collaborate with City Council on sustainability measures, the 9R student connection to community arts projects, and the new business or questions. And I'm trying to decide, did we allow time for this an hour and a half? What did we allow?
Yes.
1 hour and a half. Perfect. 30. That's our goal. And I will keep us moving as best as possible. So how about if I turn it over to some
Sure.
to open up with some introductory remarks or updates?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, just a pleasure to get to meet you all again and go over some of the things that we are working on in the city. I do have two directors that are teed up to give a bit of an update on some things that I think affect or have a positive impact, I hope, on the 9R school district. So I'll first start with Turi, our Parks and Recreation Director, to give an update on some of the programs that we're doing to coincide with 9R.
Sure, thank you. Terry Nykum, Parks and Recreation Director for the city. Just first update, we're back in the gymnasiums for our basketball programs in schools, and thank you very much. That really does help us provide and offer a full basketball program for youth, which we co-serve. And then the second update is we are nearing completion of a concept paper and a budget for the soil program so that we could submit a GOCO grant application, and that will be turned in on Thursday, the 2nd. If GOCO accepts our concept paper, we'll be invited to do a full application. At that point, we'll probably be coming back to both the city and the school board to formalize an IGA and things like that. So those are our updates in Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Tard.
Thank you.
Does anybody have questions of Tori before he steps aside? Anyone from that arm?
What are the grants? Is there an amount that it goes up to?
So we're applying for a community impact grant, and there's only about $2.5 million statewide that will be distributed. And we're looking to put in an application upwards of $750 to $1 million, depending on what Charlie and I work out. So it's going to be a very competitive grant process, but it's with Great Outdoors Colorado.
Thank you for doing
Tori, thank you.
Thank you.
And then next, our Community Development Director, Scott Shine, to give an update on some of our workforce housing initiatives that we're ongoing. And then also maybe to touch upon the Miller School construction and making sure that we're partnering up.
Good afternoon, council and board members. Thank you for the chance to give some updates. I run by that Riverview soil project all the time. That's going to be a very cool project. So congratulations on that. That's coming along. Looking forward to seeing that develop. So we have a lot going on in our department, particularly around housing, and we've met with Dr. Chesser a few times individually, and then I've met with you to give updates on the Urban Renewal Authority and how that overlaps with housing efforts. So thank you for continuing to support that effort. You know about the townhome project that's being developed on North Main. We've presented that as sort of our dipping our toe in the water and getting a replicable model that we can use for bigger projects in the future. So we now have templates for different types of deed restrictions for housing. We have a process that we've used to that's fair and equitable and transparent, that gives people opportunities to get in those housing units. And we didn't do it on this project, but we have means to give preference points for employees of organizations that help participate in housing projects. And that's something we've talked to Dr. Chesser a lot about, setting that up so that in future projects, when there's participation from public or private entities, we have a way to not totally restrict use of those housing units, but give preference points. And that's sort of the best practice we've gleaned in other communities. The other big project right now we're going to give an update to council on next week is the Three Springs Village 2 and what we're calling infrastructure extension partnership. As you know, Three Springs committed to deed over a 40-acre parcel to the school district. And we're discussing if that's the right size for that land dedication, and if there's flexibility there, could some of that land be used for housing instead, and be used to be targeted towards local workforce housing as we extend infrastructure to the north. So nothing's been committed to yet. It's just initial conversations, but we're talking with both Parks and Recreation about the 75-acre park in Three Springs and the 40-acre school site, and saying, what are the real needs? Can we kind of right size those land dedications and then use any leftover land for different purposes, now that we're about 15 years into development of Three Springs. So a number of other things going on. La Posta is the other big project that we've talked about, and we'll most likely take advantage of the URA for that project once it's all annexed in the city limits. But that's a quick overview on housing related items. And then as far as Miller Middle School, I know there's been some conversations on road impacts and utilities with our engineering division. I haven't been in the thick of those, but we appreciate you just in your team taking that feedback and looking at how the project's going to impact our overall transportation system and utility system. Okay, so I think everything's moving ahead there. I haven't heard otherwise, but I think we're in pretty regular communication with your design team at this point. Is that good?
I just have a quick question, Scott. So, Rick and I think Kristen and I were on a call with Megan, I forget the other gentleman's name, just generally talking about the Three Springs property, but there's not been really any updates since then.
Yeah.
Will we have an update with that team or someone else before?
Yeah.
Assuming what decisions are made.
We just we finalized an update report, so they've captured all of those conversations that they've had and we're presenting that out to council next week. So now would be a good time to revisit that and find the right, if you wanted that at a full board meeting or a smaller group, however you want to do
It
that.
was just a really quick, conversation, just.
It was described as the first conversation.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So just, I know we, wanted to make sure that any plans were not detrimental to, future plans for school. We're starting a new long-range planning process, that sort of thing. So we just need to make sure.
Yeah, I would
love to
get an update
I would
on that, 'cause
too.
I really have,
Yeah.
the full board hasn't been presented with
So-
any information. I actually don't even know what the structure of that
Yeah.
looks like in terms of how that land is reserved and what kind of approvals would need to be in place for that to change.
I heard, and I don't remember how or when this was, that there was 40 acres for parcel for 9R, and then they were asking to maybe move that somewhere else that now doesn't have the infrastructure to build something there on that side that does. Is that true? I mean, is it just like a random 40 acres to 9R? There was
There's a
specific piece,
parcel.
which I thought I heard was being moved. Is that correct?
Again, just initial discussions
Okay.
about both, is that the right size? Is that the right location? It was this initial conversation, I think, was about what's your timeline for sort of looking at using that property. And so it's all just exploratory right now.
And we did give that feedback that we are starting actually next month, a new long-range planning process. And may end up there, that would probably include discussions about school there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we would just want to make sure that any decisions that we make together on whether we move that or not, don't either cause more time or more money to be spent in that's.
And what we're looking at doing is actually getting outside funding to build that infrastructure in the near term instead of waiting
Gotcha.
for the developer. So I think there's a way to sync those things up.
Okay.
I have a little question, maybe for you, but also the school. During the last meeting we had, I brought up a little bit about connectivity associated with big constructions taking place at Miller. Are you working on good access, not just for cars off Johnson Street, but also for the bicycles and pedestrians? And that's combined, I guess, question.
Those, I think, have been the conversations around Junction Street, primarily how that's designed and laid out. I think as everybody's aware, schools are in a unique position in Colorado where they're not subject to the strict requirements of the local land use code. And so we've developed a good relationship where we'd like to say we can advise you, we can offer suggestions, and 9R's taken advantage of that at points. But to that specific issue, they don't have to submit for review where we would provide comments and require any connectivity, but.
And how their design is, do we make sure that the roads that we manage as a city have the appropriate corridors?
Yes.
Bike and pedestrian,
That is in with that and utilities, if they're hooking into the city's utility system, those are the areas where we do have more authority, I would say, or more clear delineation.
and then for the schools, how is that working? I'm gonna pick another because it's a good example. Bike and pedestrian access from the northeast, the dirt hill there.
Yeah, absolutely. So student safety and security are number one, and we realize the current situation, right? There's one in and out for everyone. So I don't know if you've been able to see the plans yet, but definitely we have a smoother entry into the school. So there, probably know that we're building the school up on the field. So there will be an entrance there that will be for parent drop off, staff, that sort of thing. And then there's a different entrance that will be for buses. So we're trying to, really sort of dilute the, the traffic that's happening around there. There will be better trails from the community. Right now, there's a lot of drop off in areas that aren't really supposed to drop off. And so we're cleaning that up. And then there will be sort of better biking and pedestrian ins and outs of the school, but I'd be happy to see those things at some point.
I think the plans changed, because I think last time the only access was off Junction Street.
Well, it's off Junction, but there are two outs.
So the-
For cars.
For cars.
I think what he's talking about are people coming in from those other.
By the garden and
By
then down
foot.
from Walgreens.
Right,
And
by
so
foot and by bike.
I
Yes.
asked about that. So we just voted on granting all the utility easements at a recent board meeting. And I asked about that. So those will be closed during construction. They're gonna have to for safety because they're gonna be staging equipment and things down there. But eventually, yes, and they will be able to access the way that the kids had, but it's going to be actually designed for that. And this is the dirt hill kids are walking their bikes up there, and it'll be safer.
And is the school district communicating properly when you open that up? Does the city need to do anything to make sure that?
I think that would be something that we
That
have
would
to have
be-
and talk to
that
the
would be great.
city.
I know that our, bond agent and our facilities department and our construction team are all talking with, they have to run everything. The city and city plan. So we can make sure that that's a real focus area.
Absolutely. Because it is, and it gets muddy and it's weird getting to that school, but it will be, I did ask about that access. It'll be closed during the construction. And then going forward, I think it would be smart to talk to the city, but we haven't had transportation on that specifically come across.
Well, I appreciate that.
That's an important thing to bring.
Very.
Like commuting to schools is a.
Because kids come from those back neighborhoods. Mine did. They came from north, so.
I think 9R is one of the most active developers in the community right now. All your projects, so, yeah, if there's ever a need to advice, or if we want to firm that up in some sort of an MOU about how we work together on actual development projects, be happy to pursue that if that council and the board wanted to do that.
Sure, yeah.
I apologize. Following up for just a moment, Scott, on the discussion about Three Springs, since we did have that very initial conversation with Tim and the other gentleman who I can't remember his name either, unfortunately. Prior to this, it sounds like there's definitely been other discussions since then. If you're preparing a presentation to council, we would love to have an opportunity to get caught up on what's going on, hopefully prior to that. So if we can arrange another meeting, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure, do you want a full board? Do you want me to come to a board meeting and do an update, or get you information before that? Or-
It'll be a board decision. I mean, from what I understand, moving because we've already had one revision, I believe, 5 or 6, 7 years ago, that is a full board decision, so.
Three Springs has an agreement with 9R directly. We have a master sort of development agreement, but then it is an agreement between you two directly. So,
Right.
yep, I'll follow up with.
So you'll be
Dr.
extending
Chester.
the invitation via
Yes.
Jose to Scott to
Yeah.
speak at your board meeting. I'm just providing the.
Yeah,
what I
thank you.
see is The next step.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I think.
Via Jose.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Great.
Thank you,
Scott, thank you. Thank you. So next on our agenda is kind of a discussion of, or an update of what each entity is doing around DEI initiatives, and then a possible kind of a regional approach to DEI, something that's come out of our evaluation of our boards and commissions. So Jose, will you or Aaron be doing an update on that?
Sure, we can. Just want to see that on that 1.3, Mayor, there was also for Durango School Board update. I didn't know if they had anything they wanted to put in.
We
so-
had a couple things, but
But
it's okay.
it's also.
Some of our things are kind of integrated, so I was gonna give you an update.
1.6.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was gonna give you an update on our bond projects when we get to 1.6.
Okay.
But just a couple updates on kind of what's going on with Durango School Board. We are continuing our DEIB work, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit more in the next one, so I won't expand upon bond projects or DEIB, but I will say that there was a pretty public lawsuit against Durango 9R School District for just kind of a misposting of board seat that was up for election. Since then, since we've met with you last, since very recently, as of a couple of days ago, we've resolved that matter. And the judge did rule in favor of the district that we were in good standing in the way that we posted that board seat, and it was appropriate according to the law. So just wanted to update you all on that. We've also had a charter school application that's come through a couple of times to our Durango 9R school district. There's been a lot of back and forth about that, going to the State Board of Education. But the State Board of Education in October upheld our decision for denial for that charter school, as it wasn't a great fit for what our vision and values are for each and every student in our school, in our community. So just wanted to update you on those two kind of like legal things that you may have seen come across the news or media, and give you that information. And then we'll talk a lot more about what we're doing with our bond projects and how exciting it is. And yes, we are doing a lot of construction and our DEIB work, which we're really, really passionate about, making sure that each and every student feels a sense of belonging when they come to our schools. Their families feel a sense of belonging, and we can talk more about that, but just wanted to update you on the legal matters.
Oh, it's good news. Very good news.
Yeah, we feel like we're really, really practicing hard as a board to make sure that we're doing everything as the law states. That's a focus of ours, is making sure that we're in legal compliance with every decision that we make. So really happy that our decisions that we're making are being upheld.
Wonderful. Would you then like to lead right into to switch it up?
Sure,
and talk
yeah,
about the
DEIB, sure, yeah.
And then we might do a bit about DNRs.
Yeah, so for a long time, there were lots of efforts in the Durango 9R school district over the years, back dating to the 90s to the early 2000s, where different initiatives have come to fruition that we really need to focus on making sure that we're meeting the needs, educational needs of each and every student. And those have been community partnerships and conversations, but they haven't always got us to where we are intending to go, which is to make sure that we are making sure that our kids who are maybe scoring at the bottom or are feeling that sense that they really aren't finding a place in our schools get to that place of excellence, and that they're in the very best place that they can possibly be educationally and socially. So in efforts to do that, Dr. Chesser brought in a third-party consultant who's been working with Durango 9R school district his name is Tommy Lewis. He's done a ton of education with our administrative staff, but also is working really intentionally with a group of about 50 to 60 community members. They're educators, they're teachers, they're parents, they're just passionate community members who are working together to kind of move the needle a little further than we have in the past on making sure that not only our students feel a sense of belonging in our schools, but they're also getting a equal opportunity. They're all being given a good opportunity for their future. So we're working really hard on that. Also working really hard on teacher training and education to make sure that that lens that our teachers are looking at all of their students in is maybe a new lens that they haven't looked through before. So we've done a couple of all-day teacher professional developments on just where are your biases, what's going on, how can you do better in the classroom, what are strategies that you can use to make sure you're meeting the needs of all learners, recognizing all learners and understanding their backgrounds better. So a huge effort on behalf of our superintendent and the district staff is underway to really make sure that this work continues to be elevated and that it doesn't just kind of get swept under the rug as it has in the past. And that was a direct initiative that our community brought out to us. When Mick Souter and I, former board members, sat down with community members, they said, if you're going to start this again, please don't forget that you're doing this work in a couple of years and have a new initiative come to the surface. So we're really committed that this is something the board's written a resolution on. This is something that is in writing. The board expects this of the district, and we're holding them to that. And they are rising to that challenge and providing great teacher education training, great conversations with students in classrooms to be able to get to the place where we hope, where we just don't even have one student who doesn't feel like they belong in their school. That would be the ultimate goal, and that every student is meeting their goals and their dreams and having their educational needs met. So that's kind of like where we're at and where we're going. And Dr. Chesser or Erica, who's on that committee, if you have more to add on DEIB.
Yeah, that was a great introduction. The only thing I would add is that it's really integrated into our strategic plan as a district. So this isn't like an outside thing. Like we've actually asked Dr. Chesser to make sure this is a part of the district master plan, and there's accountability measures and things that we're going to be reviewing quarterly. that is along with everything else we're trying to do as a district. So it was really important to the board that this, again, not be another effort that went and sat on the shelf, but that it's something that not only continued, but is being monitored and accountable, just like test results and everything else. And so we're putting that into practice. It's really exciting.
So they made it required for staff to attend this. So, I mean, that's how sincere it is. And coming up here next week, I think our board is going to get the same training that we've asked all of our employees to have, so that we're all on the same page. So I'm excited about that.
Questions of the school district? I was just curious what kind of parental feedback you could get.
Really great parental feedback, especially from our parental groups who felt like they were kind of cast aside in the past. We have new parent liaisons in our schools. So we have 3 Spanish-speaking parent liaisons and 1 parent liaison who speaks Dene, and it's really just working with our Native American parents to make sure that Native American students and their families are feeling that sense of belonging, that they have those connections, that reducing the barriers to enrolling them in sports and after-school activities, reducing the barriers and getting that communication from the school, like to the family, and helping the families understand that. We recently had like a parent education night for Spanish-speaking families where they could come in and just learn, like, what is this whole plan for a public education? What does it look like? What do I need to know? How do I navigate this as a parent? And that was really important and meaningful to those parents who needed that information in their own language. We've been working on having translators at all of our meetings. So if it's a parent meeting, and the parent is Spanish speaking, they can request a translator. We've really upped our budget and our commitment to translation services so that those parents have that access point that they need. And what the parent liaisons do is they are that kind of go-between between the school and the family who speaks the native language and maybe understands the culture and the background and can really actually get to know each family and what they need and how to connect them to those resources within the schools that they need. So that's been a huge part of that DEIB piece, is kind of figuring out how do we need to make bridges and help people feel welcome and come in. And this is one way that we've been able to do that.
The other question? What if we give an update on what the city's been doing with our TPI?
Absolutely. I'm going to start with Erin. She's been leading our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Obviously, one of our strategic goals listed on it. And talk a little bit about our journey that we've had in the past 12 months. And obviously started before that, but just give a current update of where we are.
Thanks, Jose. So similar to the school district, we recognize that we had a lot of great efforts and focus around DEI, but we saw an opportunity for maybe a more aligned or intentional approach around how we're delivering our DEI efforts to particularly our internal staff. And so about 18 months ago, we really kind of reset our process. And the first thing we did was we sought out a really strong partner that has been really beneficial for us that in this space, the municipal space, the CPSHR. And the first thing we did is really go through an assessment of what like our team of really how are we doing, what do we seek, and what do we do. So we started with employee focus groups. That was really important. The first real critical piece that we partnered with CPSHR is we created a roadmap. And it is our internal tool of really, how is that guiding us towards our efforts of moving towards DEI? And in that roadmap, we outline key short-term, mid-term, and then long-term goals and initiatives and key things that we're targeting to do. At this point of that roadmap, we're very much on the focus is on the internal piece. And that is intentional as we build upon those before we get to those, longer term goals and initiatives as we expand beyond our internal component of our DEI efforts. So this has been a really helpful piece, and we all have something to really anchor to and to guide us as we work through it. Our executive leadership team has really spent a lot of time both on learning, but on creating alignment and communicating, our whole across the city around our efforts. And we've had a lot of success with our approach with our learning and engagement series, which has been well participated by not only it's open to council and to all of our employees. And we've really centered that approach around engagement. How do we optimize the engagement with all the different folks that we engage with across whatever we do across the city. In fact, so next month, we have our 4th module. It'll be in person. I'm really excited about that, and we'll get to leverage both an in-person learning session for our employees and our supervisors across the organization. And on top of all that, we have launched the DEI cross-functional team, our CFT. And their primary function is to really complement the things outlined in the roadmap to make sure that we're staying on track and that we're generating, will really support us moving through the roadmap. And so that has been great. One of the biggest things I think that came out of our review of last year from an internal perspective is we essentially did a DEI inventory. We tied it to budget dollars spent to activities that support DEI. And although we always knew we were doing things, but this really gave us a way to build like a solid metric around outlining the initiatives and the programs and the support things that we have across the city that we can build as a baseline.
Questions of Erin?
That's great.
So Jose, do you want to tee up the
Sure.
discussion on the regional?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I've talked a little bit about this with Karen and Sistor, run one-on-one monthly meetings that we have. We've been looking at our boards and commissions and looking at ways in which we can better utilize the resources that we have. And one of those efforts that came through that we had discussed with the city council study session was our community relations commission. We have had some resignations on this. We only have one member left. But one of the things that we had talked about was how do we make it more in a community style? When we had the CRC, some of the frustrations that would happen would be going into areas that really weren't the city's purview. And you could see there was a little bit of frustration. Well, how do we talk about maybe something that's with the Chamber of Commerce? And how do we talk about maybe something that's more of a county issue or something that might be with 9R? And an idea that we had as staff that talked about with Karen was if there's ability to get some of the community partners where we could kind of put a commission or a task force together where each entity would have one person represented and they could actually talk about ways in which we can be more inclusive in our community and things that maybe we miss that are in those gaps that might not be completely a city or may not be completely a county or completely a school district or even with Fort Lewis College. So we had those discussions and was just wanting to put that out there, letting you know that we're having those discussions to see if we can formulate that. I've had the same discussions with Chuck Stevens at the county. His kind of thing was like, well, let me see who else might be interested and we can kind of talk. So just wanted to put that on the agenda here to let people know that we're having those discussions, thoughts that we might have and have an ability to answer any questions that might come forward. We really don't have anything formulated in regards to like how many meetings or anything else, but what we would look at it really being is something that is a shared resource where the city could host one day, then maybe the school district hosts one of the meetings, the county hosts one of the meetings, college hosts one of the meetings. Just I think a really great way in which we can be connected and really kind of engage with each other and try to put a good forefront with all of us along the way.
Thoughts?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, one question and then I have some thoughts. Is the vision to have that replace the CRC with that or have your council and then have a representative from that? Or what does it look like from the cities?
From what we have now, I guess from what we've had the direction so far has been that it would replace our CRC. So we probably look at our board member, I believe who's Olivia DePaz, who's on it. DePablo would be our representative for that. And then we would just see if each one would have one, and then we would just take turns hosting and staffing and assisting with those meetings and having those conversations.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think it's a great idea. I've had that conversation with several people over the last few years that I've been involved with it at the district I think I've actually talked to some CRC members, some folks that are involved in our stuff. I've talked to college folks about, we all have these little groups that are working on it to, make our organizations better. But we're all doing the same things in some ways. So there's also some efficiencies there and best practices that we could share. So I personally think it's a great idea. I would want it from my perspective, for us, it wouldn't replace what we're doing. It would be, we probably have a liaison that sits on both that could kind of bring back ideas back and forth. But I think it's a great idea because there's a lot of resources between all of those entities that we could benefit from.
So how would that be different? Don't you have a monthly meeting with the board? And I've sat on one of those.
Coordinating
The coordinating
Yeah, that's
committee.
not really- it doesn't focus solely on DEI.
So this would be just for DEI.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, got it.
And it's what, every 2 months, the coordinating committee? Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it
A lot of the same parties, but focus on something different.
Yeah, maybe different representatives.
Yes, yep, got it. Thank you.
So
Great
then we
idea.
will just keep you
Having
posted of other
discussions.
discussions.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
we've even talked about bringing in maybe some corporate entities like the hospital.
Sure.
And they
Sure.
also are doing some, and they also see it as a redundancy in some cases, but if you're bringing it in a larger area. And you could even think about it like the public health department, or something like that. So
Sure.
so we're looking at it. Systemic.
Yeah.
And sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Buckley Park. Turn it back over to Jose.
I'm kind of going to pass it over to Karen. I think they
Okay.
placed this on the agenda, so we're
Okay.
discussions.
yeah, and I think, you know, we've talked about, the conversation, of course, there's a lot of moving parts right now between city and DFPD as far as what's happening with buildings, but I have relayed to the board that the goal is still at some point, if Carnegie staff are able to go to a different location, that we would get back to discussing this trade with Carnegie and parking for Buckley Park.
Sure.
Right now, there's staff there, so that can't happen, but that's still the goal.
Yeah, I think when, you know, as we talked about Carnegie, one of the parts that kind of became an opportunity was just trying to figure out how we could make Carnegie possibly work. We do have 2 departments that utilize that building. Well, 3, transit, records, and our IT department. And as the 9R with the DFPD property, it's kind of hard to call it DFPD property because we say I don't think anyone does, but the 9R property now, as that's gone through and we've had discussions with DFPD and kind of moving over to a different possibility, feasibility with the downtown police fire station concept at River City Hall not working. It did continue to bring up an opportunity, I think, that we're looking at in the feasibility of can we exit completely out of Carnegie. Even when we were having discussions, I think the very beginning of Carnegie, there was still probably a part to where IT would still be there and it wouldn't be the complete building because of the space needs. But I think that we have an opportunity now to begin the discussion to see if we could actually completely remove Carnegie and have that as an asset that could possibly be used by 9R and admin for an administration building or for whatever uses that's there. So we're still working through that. I'm meeting with our group representatives about looking now at the 9R complex. I think we have a follow-up meeting with the council and DFPD in March.
Yes.
Of just kind of talking about what we found out in this feasibility. So from a staff perspective, we're really ramping up with trying to not only get with our architect and find out what the feasibility would be of being able to get that as a city hall complex, but also looking at scheduling a public input meeting mid to late February to hear from the community on what they would think of if this was a city hall complex, what were things that they'd like us to make sure that we're protecting, things that maybe they'd like to see us improve. And so I think it kind of makes sense. There could be some pieces that fall together where, you know, we could have a city hall with a 9R complex, then you have the county right there and it kind of all has us grouped together. But we'll definitely continue to look and have those conversations and I'll keep Karen up to date as we go through.
And just so everyone's aware, the board did enter into a lease agreement with the DFPD to lease that space for district office. You may have seen Big Picture High School. We're now leasing a space at Tech Center. And in the lease, there's we are supposed to have a 1-year notice because it would take us that long to figure it out. So obviously this impacts what happens with our staff and where we're going and that sort of thing. So I'm sure that's why that was attractive.
Is there a time frame?
Is
there a time frame about trying to?
March is our update of what's might be feasible and, you know, can we, so it's an update of what might work at River City Hall.
Okay.
And then how it might work with us using this property. But it's not a definitive, it's an update.
Yeah, I think that's the point. I mean, I'd call it a pretty big pivot, going from looking at River City Hall and then not only just the big picture building to now, could this be a city hall complex? And I think one thing that we've learned is just with that property, there's a lot of community interest in it. And so being very careful to make sure that people know it's still a feasibility. We're still getting public input. It's not something that is a done deal. In my conversation with Karen, I completely understand the need to have planning portions to go through. So that's something that if it continues to get more real and we continue to go there, beginning to have conversations with Karen on that. I expressed to her that it's not anywhere in my intention that it'd be like one day, be like, all right, yep, y'all got to go. We're ready. We'll definitely work with it because there's got to be moving parts. It's almost kind of like shuffle parts of how do we go. I have a staff that's in River City Hall. So if that were to happen, I got to find a spot for them and then get things ready and then get funding in place and still have to go through those funding option discussions. So I do think that, you know, it will probably still a good chunk of change away from being able to get to a part of where things are actually beginning to move and start to happen on it.
And I would add that Al made it very clear that he's optimistic about River City Hall working just for the fire district. But if there's an issue that unforeseen that comes up, 9R building is his backup.
Right.
We talked about other sites, traffic issues like that, they do not work, so that he is retaining that as his secondary option. But proceeding as if he can make River City Hall. So again, we're all in a state of ambiguity. Some definition, but still a lot to be determined.
So this was actually my agenda item that I added. It's my understanding that the MOU with the school district in the city of Durango expired at least 18 months ago in regards to the exchange of Buckley Park for property. And we are also sitting in a state of ambiguity. It'd be nice to know if you'd like to move forward with another MOU, or should we be looking at other things?
You know, it's up, I guess, to the board if there's an MOU that you'd like to go in that kind of formalizes our discussions in regards to Buckley and Carnegie. I don't think that there would be any concern about doing so on that portion. From the city side, we do have that lease that we've exercised a 10-year. We actually had the first one, then there's another 10-year after that. So however, the school district would like to get into an MOU. I mean, it's not something I would say like absolutely not. I think that there's intentions to continue to have those conversations. We just have areas that have to be checked off the list before we can actually get into that and say that's a building that might be available.
So we could talk to our attorney about extending that lease. Because I think it did say the intention was by, was it May 2021, that there be an agreement. Obviously, there are other mitigating factors that have happened, so that's what everyone would like to do.
I think it would probably be a show of good faith on both parties to have an actual active MOU. Because as we all know, it is a parcel of land, specifically Buckley, that is near and dear to a lot of folks. And the other thing is different issues come up, different intentions change. There's turnover in council and boards. And so it would be nice to, you know, since we have all allowed that MOU to lapse, I think it would be appropriate to revisit it and get it back and you know, put it on the table and say, yes, this is what we as two entities are going to do. And I don't see any reason why it would be inappropriate, assuming you guys don't disagree.
I just agree with that. And I think it's also important for the public that like heard this was happening. And then there's kind of been a vacuum in communication, I think, from both parties, not for any, not intentionally, but just to let folks know, because obviously our community cares about Buckley Park as they should. It's very important green space in our downtown area.
And sledding, you know, come on.
I know, right? Gotta know where the sledding's gonna be. I guess I had a question about what happened with the lease renewal on Buckley recently. The way that was renewed, and in my opinion, as an individual, came across as not really wanting to act as a good faith partner by the city. And so I'm curious if I'm missing something or if I don't have all the information. But the way that lease was renewed seemed really underhanded, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about why it was handled that way.
I'm not exactly sure why it was underhanded. Just as the lease was said, we had to give notice to the school district, written notice, and pay our lease payment. And so that's what we did. We had like 6 months to do so. That was part of our lease, and that's why we sent it that way. that was with our legal team saying, our previous city attorney saying, we need to submit this and here it is. And that's why we did following the lease that we had signed. I'm not sure about the underhanded part. I'd be happy to address
Well,
what.
it was my understanding, and maybe my understanding is wrong, and that's why I brought it up.
That's a strong statement.
It was,
without
well, it
specifics.
was, and that's why I'm asking for clarification. I didn't mean for that to be accusatory, but it was my understanding that the notice to renew came a day after the deadline for us to go back on it, while we were in an MOU on an agreement to exchange Buckley. So there was knowledge on both parties' part that we were actually actively trying to get rid of Park, and then to hand over a lease for a 10-year lease on it without having a discussion about it first with us seemed, again, maybe underhanded is too strong a word, but it seemed like maybe not acting in best faith. Like, why don't we sit down and have a discussion? Maybe we should do it year to year, knowing that this is in negotiation, and waiting until after that deadline had passed to say, oh, and here's our 10-year thing, made me feel like there maybe wasn't an effort to have a trade for it, because you're having, I mean, in all honesty, like renting Buckley Park for $100 a year is a pretty good deal. I don't blame you for wanting to continue that.
Sure.
But given the MOU that had been established, it seems.
I mean,
questionable.
I
It
would,
did feel that.
I would push back a bit.
Yeah. I would too.
Because I would say that we did have a deal. And we had that conversation with Karen, a tentative one, I would say, let me put it that way, a tentative one. That we had got to the part of saying, okay, we were ready. I told Karen we had come up with a term sheet, we were good. So I think from the good faith effort, we were there, and then you all pulled away from that agreement, and then it kind of.
Wait, I'm sorry, how did we?
Wait, when did we do that?
No, we came back and told you, so when the board had the conversation, they also felt like they needed cash, right?
Mhm.
But then they had the conversation, and we brought back to you, they're ready to do this. But then by that time, I'm assuming we couldn't go forward with it, because then there was a conversation with DFPD. But the last time we talked about it, we said, yes, the board has agreed to go ahead without any additional cash. And that's when things sort of changed. So there, the last word was, the board was in agreement to do that. But then the whole BFPD conversation changed because of the building and all that sort of thing, is what I'm assuming that's why it changed.
There was a couple things with that. I mean, I have no, what I'm gonna say with this is gotta be clear, I don't have any ill will or an intention or anything like that. I think this is just how negotiations go. But from my recollection, it was, we had one, and I remember emails going back where I said pulling out is going to be an issue right now. And then it was, by the way, here comes the Wells Group, and then CBRE, and they were going to be on half of your negotiation. So from a city perspective, from at least my perspective, it felt all of a sudden like we were going back to the table. And that's how it was represented to me by CBRE. When we had that first meeting, they're like, look, they want to talk about everything else about the parking, how much that was going to be worth, the building, and how much that was going to be worth. So from my standpoint, my view, not saying it was your intention, but how I took that as, this is a whole restart back over of this deal
Which
and how we're going to go
Really,
forward.
because of what happened with the Wells Group, I think that was one of the reasons why the board said, let's just go ahead and do this without the extra. And so that was the last, I mean, I can go back and make sure we're recalling all the emails and all the very specifics. But I know after that happened, the board said, we'll go ahead, and that's what was relayed, is we'll go ahead to move forward with that. I think what the conversation here is really separate from that, because I still believe everybody is going in good faith, we're gonna trade Buckley Park. I think the concern was, it was a surprise to our finance director to get a check and an announcement that we're getting a check a day after the day when we could have said, we're not gonna lease for 10 years. So it was an automatic. So let's say that happened 6 months before April, whenever that is, April 1st, whatever the date was. Let's say November 1st would have been the date that we had to say, we're not going to automatically renew for 10 years. We got a check the day after that saying we are renewed. You are renewing. So we didn't have a conversation. Now shame on us for our finance director maybe not having that date. They had a different date down. So but I'm just saying that, you know, it was a 10-year. So, but the idea, I think we felt that, well, this just automatically renews for 10 years without any kind of conversation. I know you and I have talked since then, and you're like, no, we definitely want to go. We're planning to move forward with a trade for Buckley. We're not saying we automatically have it for 10 years and you can't really do anything about it. I don't think that's the intent,
No,
but it felt like that.
So can I
That's
just
why.
suggest that, so that we don't do this, first of all, I'd like to suggest that underhanded may have been an imprecise
Agree
word.
to that, that was.
So I'd like to remove that from the discussion. I'd also like to suggest that that lease has been ongoing for decades. So you should have been aware of it. Maybe you weren't, but you should have been aware of it. It has been in the process as part of the effort. I also want to recognize that, yes, you could say, oh, we're not going to do anything. We've got a lease that's for 10 years and another. But you've seen the actions of trying to proceed in good faith. And with all the complications of the moving the spaces around. So I'd like to say maybe we cleared the air, but I'd also like to say that, you know, it was an arrangement and maybe you weren't as informed as you needed to be about it. I know that we're also cleaning up some of our historical things, so I want to recognize that as well, which is, let's make sure we're doing everything by the books. Is there anything else that needs to be discussed on this topic?
Maybe, yeah, of course, I appreciate you bringing that forward, because I think it's something that, you know, you get off the chest. Would an MOU address good faith back to where it should be?
I think so. I think personally, like as a board member, when another organization, any entity doesn't respect an agreement that we had, it shows to me that you're not working in good faith personally. So I would feel comfortable if we had an MOU going forward that would give us some assurances that we're still in conversation. And we know that that's a potential possibility.
And I will say, I will echo what Kristen said, which is that MOU is coming up on 2 years expired. So I do not feel that the city has acted in good faith in accordance with Buckley Park and what we're trying to do. And I will also say, which I say almost every board meeting, is that our funding is vastly different than yours. We have very limited funding. So Buckley is a resource. It's a collateral that we have. And we need to act in the best interest of our families. And so we do need that good faith from the city.
If you asked us at a previous meeting to redo the MOU, and we said, I was like, because I would never have said no. So just wanted to
I
make
will
sure
say
didn't
that
miss something, or because it's not, I want to say that I support this act of good faith. I think we all do. And so I think like, let's move forward in a positive manner because this council does support that MOU. And so let's get it done.
Considering that we've had trouble scheduling meetings for my tenure on the board, and this is only our second meeting in the year and a half that I've been around, we haven't done that. We've had a great deal of difficulty
So the way
getting together.
It's worked very effectively for us because it is hard to schedule these meetings. We all have so many meetings. And so not that I don't want to, I'd like to schedule more often. I think we're trying to get to once a quarter. But we've had a tremendous amount of success, or a good deal of communication and success in the MOU between the city and the Durango Fire Protection District, because it allows Jose and Hal to work very closely together every other week, which we can't do as a group.
Right.
And so these feelings that you're airing in this environment, which is good, and it's nice that we have this opportunity for you to do so, but it's difficult for us as a group to solve that problem. So better for the leaders of the organization to be able to get together more frequently and then report back to us. We're finding it really effective. But I too would support just that we as organizations sign an MOU, allowing them to, you know, continue with these discussions and negotiations and bringing us forward. But there are a lot of moving pieces, as you know, a lot. It's monopoly right now. Everyone's going everywhere. So.
And I agree with Melissa that it has worked so great with the MOU and the fire department here. And before you say that we're not acting in good faith, like give us a chance to redo the MOU. And then if we say no and don't want a partnership, then you can say the city isn't acting in good faith. But I would say that without giving us an opportunity to show you we are, that's unfair.
Yeah, to redo the MOU and then to coordinate some meetings upon leadership to move forward.
I guess I would.
I will, I think we've discussed dealing with an MOU and working to get that going. And so I think that's where it is with the next steps, and that's between Jose and Karen to get that one word. I do want to echo Jessica's comment, though, that without raising it to us as a board, without a letter to us or anything like that, we don't have a sense of how you're doing. Because we're doing, like, we're moving, we're doing as best we can. So I think, I don't want the headline to be in our, feels that, I want it to be, maybe there was that a sense of understanding, acknowledgement of the lease arrangement, and the fact that it hasn't been brought to us for discussion until now. And your first response is, yes, let's move forward. So, yes, Eric.
I guess it seems like we just like swap spaces a little bit, like you just put a little bit of pressure on us that we didn't recognize our lease was up, which is valid, right? But the MOU was also up 1.5 years ago, and I'm not sure it's our responsibility to let you know that your commitment to us was lapsed 1.5 years ago. Like, that's something that should have been on your plate, to realize that you didn't fulfill the MOU that we agreed to, and now there's no agreement in place.
But
So
an
no,
MOU
we
is
didn't
mutual.
explicitly
Yeah.
ask,
Yeah,
but
it's a mutual agreement.
it is, agreed, but
We weren't feeling like you weren't meeting your end of things. So like,
Yeah.
I felt like we were working. You had the 9R and the fire going, selling your building there. We had, we wanted cash, you wanted parking spaces, we wanted Carnegie. We were so much going on, and which is valid. And that's like, it's an important location in our community. But for you to come to the meeting and say, it looks like the city isn't in good faith, that's a big statement when I wasn't even given the chance to redo the MOU. But I wasn't under the assumption that we were like, I wasn't doubting that we were gonna do this. Like, if there was a doubt that Buckley Park was gonna like not be renewed or not, like, yes, I would have probably like led the charge to get this MOU signed, but I do have good faith. And I thought the same of you. And I would never accuse you of saying the school district isn't in good faith without giving you a shot to say, hey, let's renew this. And all of us, literally the first sentence in this one discussion, like, do you want to renew the MOU? Every counselor shook their head yes. So why are we still arguing and throwing crap back and forth? Like, we're here,
Let me
yeah.
just say, first of all, the wording on the MOU, it really hasn't expired. It just says the intent was to have that done by May 2021. So I'm not sure that it's expired. I think it's more of I think this was great, so that to actually hear it, that there is definitely a desire to continue to do the trade.
And if I
So let's.
may, just
yeah,
real
and
quick, I think that the frustration with the MOU is valid. I think everyone should be able to feel how they feel. However, I'm looking at the MOU, and this was based off of a discussion that states on here on September 8th of 2020. I wasn't here. Karen wasn't here. This, I don't think got signed, because I signed it until around November or December of 2020, which literally would leave us 5 months of May of 1st, 2021 to be able to come to a deal. And I don't know when you started, Karen.
July of 21.
So, I mean, this historical document that we're bringing up, I think we need to be careful in putting the historical lens behind it, that a lot of the players that are here weren't here, didn't have these discussions, were involved in these discussions, and the effort was still there because we're still having discussions after May of 2021. And you are right, Karen, all it just says is to a land transfer prior to May 2021 or another date mutually agreeable to both parties. So I think that from where we're at here, that we can continue to move forward, because a lot of the players that were on here, and I think it was even Dan who signed this, they're not here.
Maybe
and
we can
things have
find that
changed.
mutually agreeable
Sure.
date that's other than the date that's on there.
Absolutely.
Might give everyone some reassurances.
Just one.
You
brief-
go.
No, please.
We gotta keep on moving. Like so many things in the world, what I'm hearing is communication. And that's the whole reason we're here, having these meetings, I think, is to try and foster better communication. And what my goal would be is, because I understand in the world, there are legal requirements and boxes to check it. We're all neighbors. We all live in Durango, we all live in La Plata County, we're all rowing the same direction. Our goal, at least my goal, would be let's make sure we're all treating each other like neighbors. Just, if there's something that pops into our head that says, wow, maybe knows what you should know about this. So, regardless of what we're required to do, we're all rowing the same direction. We're trying to move this community forward, whether it be through the students or the city, whatever. So that would be my goal. So thank you for hearing.
And Andrew, you had something?
Yeah, and this goes back, but I still have sort of in the back of my head, maybe just from some comments that were made with the URA or otherwise, that the city was not pleased that we sold to the fire department at all, because now we don't have, it was supposed to go in the modeling to a private entity, and I didn't communicate it to the board. And my whole thing was, well, it's been a public building forever, and a public entity wants it. What a great idea, not knowing there'd be so much pushback on the fire department, which I saw as an essential service. So I just want to publicly say that there was never any intent that I was trying to steer the URA out of some money or the public otherwise. No, there has been some of that. But I still do feel that people are not happy that the fire department purchased that. And I thought it was definitely the best choice at the time of the offers that we had. And we'll see what happens with it. But there was certainly never any intent and to say, oh, if we don't go this publicly, or we should do it this or that.
Thank you, Andrea. I'll try to end this by saying, I think we've moved on.
Good.
I think that I'm not hearing any, that was years and years, whatever ago. So I think we've moved on. I think we're trying to find a solution.
Mhm.
I think we all recognize that it requires environmental assessment, it requires design, it requires everything. And this is a significant transaction
Yes.
across multiple parties. So I think it's important. I'd like to end because I do think the statements may have gotten it off your chest, but I also think we need to recognize that from our point of view, we have been proceeding in good faith. And we rely, going forward, we rely on our two executives to have those conversations and bring it back to our respective entities. Is that enough covered? Okay, good. Tell us about your bond.
Yeah, so moving on to a lighter subject. You may have seen at Durango High School, you can already see the infrastructure for what we call our Career Impact Center going up. It's going to be a extension of the high school that allows for innovation for students. So students can come together from a marketing program, from the food service program, culinary arts program, and maybe from I don't know, give me another example, Karen.
The DECA, the business.
The DECA, the business kids. Right now, currently, there's a Durango High School salsa that's 3 different career and technical programs have come together, 3 different student groups to help package and market and develop through the culinary program a salsa. So doing more of that is what's going to be in that space. More groups of students coming together, thinking forward, thinking about education in new and innovative ways where they can just take the skills that they've learned and put them into action. So there'll be a maker space, a pitch space, and a lot more room and collaborative learning space for our Durango High School students, which our industry leaders in Durango and beyond have assured us is the wave of the future. We need kids to not just be able to gain skills, but be able to use those skills and use those skills appropriately together, because that's the workforce, right? You have to work with other people. So we're really excited about that space and really hopeful that the community will be able to use that space as well for after school, when we're not using it. It's going to be a really lovely space, really open space, really versatile. So hopefully that will lend itself to community activities and organizations partnering with us to use that space for either student or adult education reasons. We have our Miller Middle School, which we broke ground, but you haven't seen probably a lot going on over there yet. It's a little bit longer, bigger scope of that project. There's been some challenges in getting all of the goods and services that we need here to Durango with shortage in lumber and steel and all of those things. We've assigned a lot of pre-orders for those things, trying to get ahead of the order times on those things. But Miller Middle School is scheduled to open not next year, but the following year. It's going to take a couple years to build, and then to rebuild the field will be now where the parking lot is now. So the whole campus is kind of swap. Beautiful space. We've had about 50 to 60 community members helping design that space, parents, educators, students, just folks who are interested in our spaces in Durango 9R from the community. So we're really excited that both projects have been really collaborative and included many stakeholders. So you'll start seeing little bits of Miller going up in the next few months, but especially over the summer, you'll see waves happening over there. And of course, we're going to try and make sure that everyone in the city is safe as we're doing these projects. Durango High School is a little bit removed from the highway. So we're pretty confident that we're not impacting too much of the city there, but for Miller Middle School, we're going to be very aware of that as we continue that build. To try and make sure that traffic and everything can flow through there as we're creating that space. We did look at other spaces for Miller Middle School, but that was not in the community's interest. We did several community engagement listening sessions to talk about possibly moving Miller up originally up to the Riverview campus, possibly moving it over maybe to the fairgrounds. But it was the community's and parent request to keep it as on its existing site. And it was also a community request by the parents to keep their kids on the Miller campus during construction. So it will look a little frustrating for parents and for community members as we're building this, but that was their request. That was their preference. So we're going with that because we want to make sure everybody gets what they need. Out of this, Miller Middle School will be another beautiful, really open design space where students have a lot of flexible space for learning, a lot of versatile spaces. The whole idea of having like classroom desks lined up is kind of a little antiquated educational model. And so we're looking at new models with flexible seating environments that you can grow and change in as your projects that you're doing in class grow and change. So really exciting things happening that we're really thankful to the community for providing for our students. This is going to help them get into that next wave of education that's a little bit more interactive. And we're really thankful for the bond dollars that are helping our students get there.
Kristen, what percentage did they say that we're using of local labor for all of these things?
70%.
Yeah.
Really in like the sustainability committee, but being very mindful of trying to.
Questions regarding bond issues?
Just so everyone knows, we're still about 53 million short in deferred maintenance. So obviously this isn't really dealing.
Not the
with
end all
everything
be
we
all
want
of
to do. We've
projects,
also
yeah.
done- With our sustainability committee, I know that's coming up. We've done some assessments on how much PV would cost, and, you know, how we could have better HVAC, and of course that adds to that cost. So that's why we're getting ready to start a new long range planning process.
That leads into our next discussion.
Is the sustainability, did you guys put that on the agenda? Or was
Yeah,
that-
we did, and I actually put on the agenda, so I can see that. This is actually kind of in line with what Jose was saying about the DEI, and it's probably a little bit more in the future because you guys are way ahead of us in terms of sustainability. We're kind of just getting started. And most of it's been focused on the bond initiatives right now, like Miller and Impact, I believe, are both going to be are being done in accordance with the CHIPS, which is a collaborative for high performance schools, something, but it's basically a sustainability rating for specifically for school buildings. But I guess looking like as we start to approach this stuff, and I was just looking at your all sustainability plan and realizing there's so much overlap there as well, along with the DIB work, that maybe as we develop our sustainability plan a little bit more, it would be helpful to be in context specifically about some of those things, how we can work. The soil project is a phenomenal example of kind of that collaborative effort of meeting the city's needs and the 9R's needs, and them being in really in synergy. But I think there's a lot of other ones as well in terms of, you know, urban forestry or, you know, invasive species or energy management and things like that. And so there could be some efficiencies there. And I just wanted to throw that out there as an idea. And if folks had a way to do that, we do have a sustainability committee now, and we have Marty Poole on it, which has been really wonderful because that makes sure we're hearing about potential connections with the specific things we're doing right now. But I think it's going to get a lot broader in the future. So just to throw that out there.
I'm glad to hear that, Marty. I think that's probably a really good start. That is, he does have a full-time job with the city, but he also does community, you know, as a commitment to the community, works and elsewhere. So I think something you also, I would just say from what I've seen almost 4 years, is the environmental community in the community, in the nonprofits, is active. And so there might be ways to combine some of those meetings so that it's one discussion around issues.
Yeah, and we do have a bunch
Rather
of
than
community members on
individuals.
that group as well, but there might be.
Because we have the
some of-
same, you
yeah.
know, when we're working on an issue, we'll bring it back to some of the usual suspects with the environmental. So there might be also some collaboration.
Yeah, should have a student on there with other green team. Though. They could probably, do you have a few
We
students?
have a student.
Yeah, we have students. We
Two
don't
students
always,
on that group.
Green team, is that the?
The green team.
Yeah,
so
we
they're
do
doing
have
all the schools.
at every school.
And we are doing green all the schools now too, and that there might be some synergy there because they're looking for projects that are gonna positively impact their communities, right? And so if there's synergy there where they can help the city with things.
Yeah.
And then also I'd forgotten about this until you mentioned it, but also tying into kind of our CTE work, and we're doing a lot more internships. If the city wants interns, like there's a lot of students really looking for real world experiences and internships where they can learn and grow. And so that's another area where, I mean, beyond sustainability, but an area that would be worth
I think
having.
it's a very important topic, glad you are on top of it. And I think Miller is pretty much designed up to the best standards.
Yeah,
So.
with our budget, and we,
Yeah.
as much as we possibly.
We wanted to get it 100% electrified, but we couldn't make it.
But it's electric ready. I mean, it's all, it's like there's, it's all ready.
Yeah, but that's part of it. When we
Trying to
foresee what
anticipate,
might
yeah,
happen.
yeah. But the work-based internships, and we're really trying to get every high school student into one of those. So just think about that, you know, as opportunities.
I have a bunch of my businesses.
You bring it.
Yeah, I have interns every.
Talking to high school.
Yeah, I started in high school all the time. I work
I mean,
with
it's
Marie at
beneficial.
Business Education Connection, and she's
Yeah.
great, and it's a great program.
Yeah.
But I think Marty's the best, like, connection, and then if he
Yeah.
needs more help, like, pulling in the rest.
For
of the
helping,
thing.
he hasn't been on from the beginning, but we've got
Yes.
And he's also in the city manager's office now, so that conveys the importance we're putting in a cross functional effort that we're putting, that it's not a siloed effort. So I think that's important. 9R student connection to the community arts projects. Was this from our side, your side?
I don't know, we had talked on the URA some of the dollars, and I said, if you're gonna do something on North Main, can we get students involved with art projects, but I did not put this on the agenda, I'm not sure what this is.
Yeah, so our last meeting, we had talked about how to get the students involved with submitting proposals for the community art that's going up. But it didn't, our art teachers
So they
reached
didn't
out
know
to the
anything
city and they
or they didn't
couldn't
know
find the right contact. So we're looking
So,
for how to
there's
collaborate.
a couple grants that we have, one closes today, so
Okay,
probably not
yeah,
today,
yeah,
but
not that
there's another round that closes like June 30th.
Okay.
Tommy Crosby's the best one for
Tommy
these.
Crosby.
It's through the Creative Economy Commission. So there's our lodgers tax, arts and culture. They
Yeah.
can apply for grants through that with a project.
Murals,
Murals,
sculpture.
that sort of thing. And then there's the Durango Creates Grant, which I'm not the best person to know like which one will be the best to apply for. But then also the Durango Creative District has grants as well that they're administering that I think are smaller. And that might be a good one to reach out to. And then they organize like a artist market at like 11th Street in the summers. And so the DCD, Durango Creative District, and the Creative Economy Commission are the two best outlets for that.
For grants, so what, I mean, do we have competitions? If there's public art that's gonna go up, you know, like the piece that's out front here that, Brian Sarah, I think did. Like, would students ever be able to, you know, like the kinetic stuff on the trail? I'm thinking about that, like how we can get
They can
our
apply.
art students, they just apply and it's through, is it
We-
a grant? I mean, that they would apply, that's what it is.
Yeah, so it depends on what, though, like, okay, for example, we'll create a call to action, like an artist call to action if we want a specific piece of art somewhere.
Gotcha.
Right, and so that
That's
will
what I
be
mean.
like the city kind of doing that, and then, there's usually a budget and that sort of thing, but we haven't done that since the Common Threads, I think, and we're still waiting to get that installed, so I don't know when the next necessarily like call to action will be for one of those, but like the mural you see on Camino and Main. Yeah, the snake, that was through the lodgers tax. There's like a podcast right now that we just listened to, like the first trailer episode that went through today, which was awesome. That was funded through that. There's some Stillwater stuff. There's a whole bunch of stories. Yeah, then, yeah, well, that's the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the podcast. Anyway, so I would say that for like immediate
Yeah.
funding for like a project that they have and spot they wanted to go into, the lodgers tax
That's the one.
grant would be the best way to get funding for that.
And we are not connected as a council in any. way,
Right,
shape, or
right,
form.
we're just looking at what direction.
Yeah, that's,
we
I
send
sit
them.
on the Creative Economy
apply.
Commission, so that's why I know
You
the.
apply.
Your students come up with an idea. and
Okay. All right, so we'll just work with staff to get all of the contacts for all of those different
Okay. So, and I think it's important, 'cause it is, we're seeing it all over the place.
Yeah, it's
If you can
wonderful.
find an empty wall. and
Oh, we have
it's
so
Cool, I'm like, where'd that come
students
from?
that are so artistic, so we'd love to give
Mhm.
them some space to create the community.
Yeah.
And
even
see
if-
the kids represented.
I was gonna say, if there's like a project too that is like on at the school, you know, potentially too, that they wanna fund, or, cause we have murals that are on private buildings and, you know, so.
Gotcha, okay.
It does, like, they have to figure out like where, who, when, you know. all people.
So we are almost finished. We have new business questions, comments. So anything that you want on the agenda for our next meeting? And do we have
We have a date for that?
It's on our calendars. It's in April.
In advance.
Yeah,
I think we did do April, didn't we?
I believe so.
I think it's like the same, it's like also on a Tuesday at 1. So I
Yeah,
think
it's-
there must be a recurring. I like
April
these ones with
5th.
Breakfast
At 1.
April
I don't have
5th.
time.
At least
They
that's
don't
what
even
I
know
thought.
breakfast.
That- This is how many years ago it was.
Part of it is,
No, we got Matt Ronan, open records. and
the
have-
social
we do it.
review. There's no discussion other than what's on the
That's
agenda,
exactly right.
as it should be. So, anything on the?
Yes, that is what I have, April 5th.
April 5th.
Anything for?
I would suggest that that would then be great, because that will be after the conversation with the FPD in March, so maybe you have another
Mhm.
Good update.
update, because we
Probably
can
just be a
get
recurring
the MOU.
agenda item for.
So I'm gonna make a plug. I guess the city has volunteer effort that some of the folks do, and today it's taco night at the Elks Club
All right.
with proceeds going towards scholarships. So it starts at 5 o'clock and tacos are $4 plus whatever else you might want to give. And we've got a team from the city working it,
Oh, fun.
including, I think, Faye, Jose.
Doing taco prep right after this meeting.
Thank you.
So I was curious, Jose, what other projects do you have for volunteers in the community?
Wow, so that's an interesting one. I'll kind of help lead Aaron a little bit on this. There's two things that kind of happened. The first one was a challenge that Faye, I believe, started with challenging everyone here at City Hall department wise of who can put in the most community service hours with their staff. So that's kind of went on that side. And then we had our growth momentum learning series that's part of the homework for our ELT, which is our directors, our managers, and our supervisors, was that they were also supposed to do community service here within the next month and report back at our next meeting what we learned by serving our community. So I took taco night as one option that was there. I think that there was one with the animal shelter cleaning
I shoveled snow at Annie's orphans.
and these orphans.
Didn't come home with any dogs.
For you.
How our different teams have, because it's tied to resiliency. That's our competency of what this psychology and all that is all about. And so it's really interesting to see how we all got grouped into teams. So we found something that could really be meaningful to us across the city. I think there's a variety of things that folks are doing.
I raised it because I thought there might be some potential collaboration around sustainability. Some of the volunteer efforts that might be going on possibly around CPI, possibly around students getting involved. I just thought that some of these outward facing community engagement things.
Yeah,
might be
that's a great
impressive.
idea. Well, and it might be interesting to like see if our school, if, yeah, like the soil project might be a great example, right? I'm sure they're gonna need a lot of volunteers soon, but bringing students together, I think with, you know, adults in the community and city workers and stuff would be really neat. Great, I would be happy to.
Keeps them out of trouble too. The kids.
So our next meeting is April 5th, 1 o'clock at 9.
Yeah.
Hosting it. And in between time, Jose and Karen will look through the MOU, which is not expired, but
Needs to be updated.
needs to be reviewed under new leadership. And any other items, we hope to have an update on the where we're at with our buildings vis-a-vis the fire district. And then also maybe we'll get some more updates on some of these topics, the DEI regional. Is a possibility for new business or not, next agenda item. Anything else to put out there for potential agenda items.
I just want to say something separately. I didn't, my comment earlier, I didn't mean to accuse any of you of being underhanded or not in good faith. I wanted to let you know how it came across, how the actions came across from my perspective. And I brought it up because I knew there was information there that I wasn't getting also. I apologize if that came across as offensive, and I'm grateful that we're moving forward and hopefully we can have better communication.
So on that note, if there's nothing else, we're gonna adjourn this meeting. Don't forget out at 5 o'clock.
Out at 5.
Tuesday, Monday.
Wednesday.